In this video we're going to be looking at Waiting for the World to Change by John Mayer, specifically an acoustic version he did in a series of videos for VH1. They're the ones with the spooky forest Christmas tree lighting with the red stuff. You know the ones I mean. I chose this version specifically because it's the most interesting to me. It features a series of acoustic fingerstyle licks, and then he switches to the pick for the chord out at the end, as he does in so many of his tunes. Let's take a look at the chord progression. So the basic chord progression without some of the substitutions is as follows. We have D major, B minor, G, D. I'm not going to call it major after the note letters anymore. If you hear a letter, that's a major. Then we have A, B minor, G, D. So one thing we see right off the bat is we have three Ds. Three alternate fingers, alternate voicings for three of the same chord. That's very interesting. Let's go through that, so I'll call them out. We have D, B minor, G, D, A, B minor, G, D. The chorus also features multiple fingerings for the same chord. Starting with a slap, we have a D, D, B minor, have a slap A, B minor, G, D. Then it throws in at the end of the chorus this neat thing. We have the D, E minor 7th, B minor 7th, back to the E minor 7th, A, B minor, G, D. One more time, we'll call that out. Slap D, D, B minor, D, slap, A, B minor, G, D, D, E minor 7th, B minor 7th, E minor 7th, A, B minor, G, D. And then the middle bridge part features this crazy, which we'll just leave to the detailed part. After that, he switches to the pick. And there's one change he makes down low here. He kind of does this substitution. So on this G chord, takes his pinky, puts it on the E5 here. And then we chord out like this. So that's the basic chord progression. I'd like now to talk about the chord voicings and the different versions he uses, as well as something called the cage sequence. So if you find that theory stuff boring, you can fast forward right into the detailed lesson by clicking on the link below. Otherwise, stick around and we'll explain a bit of what we just saw. Let's go back to those three D chords, brought to you in 3D by me. What's going on with those? Well, these are different fingerings, but they're all the same chord because they have everything inside them to be qualified to be a D major chord, and that is a first, a third, and a fifth. So every chord needs at least 3 notes, and depending on the notes you have, that's where you get your name from. So if we play the D major scale, the way you make a major chord is you take the first, the third, and the fifth, and if you play them together, you have a D chord. And that's what we have going on here. This is a great example because we have a first, a third, and a fifth all stacked on top of each other at the D12, G11, and B10. And then with the root at the E10 here for good measure, you have a nice fat sounding and high sounding at the same time D chord. So what's the difference between that one and this one? Besides location, location, location. Well, the order of that first, third, and fifth is a bit different for this chord. We have the first here, we have the D at the A5, but here we have the fifth. And then we have an octave, another D, just a higher version of the low one. And then we have the third tacked on way high here at the B7. So the order of those degrees of the scale that are so important that make it major, minor, whatever you want, are in a different order. Thus, it's the same chord, but it sounds slightly different. So it's interesting to the ear. And when you change change these up, they sound great. So what's going on with this guy here? Well, he doesn't fret it the way I am here, so let's do what he's doing. We have our third finger on the F sharp note at A9, and our first finger is barring D7, G7, and B7. So that's a D chord all right, because we have the 1, the 3, and the 5 present. But because we have this F sharp in the bass, and that's actually the third degree of the scale, we call that a D chord first inversion, or sometimes it's notated as a D/F sharp to denote that you've got an F sharp in the bass. So if you hear people talking about inversions, first inversions, second inversions, this is where this comes from. A second inversion would be if you chuck the fifth in the bass somehow. Yeah. So there's a D second inversion. And then third in the bass, first inversion. And then the D in the bass is just a D major chord. So this segues nicely into something called the Cage sequence. And if you haven't heard about this, Google it for some more information, because I'm just going to show you a basic, quick run at it. So the Cage sequence uses the letters C, A, G, E, D to let you know that we're going to be using the chord forms based upon the open-ended fingerings for C, A, G, E, and D. We're going to take these fingerings and we're going to slide them up the neck in that order. C first, followed by A, by G, by E, by D. And this will allow you to play the same major chord all the way up the neck using 5 completely different fingerings. So let's look at the C. We know the C. Everyone knows the C chord. Well, we slide that up 2 frets. We have some open strings here we have to take care of. So I'm going to alter the fingering. I'm going to put my pinky on A5, third finger on D4. My first finger is going to bar G2 all the way down, and then my second finger is going to be on the B3. Well, that's a D chord right there. Hear it? So that is a D chord using the C chord form. And we're just altering the fingering just so we can do a movable bar. We're taking the C shape and we're making it movable by changing the fingering around. So the next one is A. So we know this A form here. We take that by hitting the open A string and then laying our first finger on D2, G2, and B2. We'll make that movable. We turn it into your basic power chord. Alright, that's a D as well, featured in the chord progression that we just looked at. So here's the C shape chord form into the A chord form, still a D chord. So the next one, C, A, G, it gets its name, Cage, by the order as well, so you remember that. So that's, everyone knows the G. So we take that G, slide it all the way up to the 10th fret of the low E, and this fingering is a bit wacky. Yeah, so we basically fret it like this with a third finger on the E3, second finger on the A2, everything else is open, pinky on the E3, slide that up to the 10th fret, and then take your first finger and bar the D7 all the way down. And as you saw before, this is the same chord that Mary chooses to play like this, much easier. But still, that's the G chord form. So far we have the C, the A chord form, and now the G chord form, which is played in this song as that. And then after that we have in the Cage sequence we did C, A, G, now we're at E. That's the first chord of the song. So you take your E chord, slide it up here, and we're going to take our first finger, lay it all across the 10th fret, and then our third finger is going to be on the G11, pinky on D12, third finger on A12. And that's basically a movable E chord form. And in this position at the 10th fret, it is the D chord. And Cage, E, the last one is a D. So we can either play the open-ended D, or hike that thing all the way up here, play that. So that is how we were able to play a D all the way up the neck using these different fingerings. And the order is C, A, G, E, and then D. And that's the cage sequence. And this works in all keys for all major chords. So hopefully that wasn't too boring. Theory bit on chord forms and how you make them, chord construction, etc. One more thing to blow your mind before we leave, and I won't go into this in too much detail, is pentatonic scales that Mayer uses in all of this stuff. We have the major pentatonic scale. The first position is this, in the key of D. That fits beautifully into that E chord form shape here. The G chord form fits into that minor pentatonic shape first position chord, and they all go down like that. So perhaps some homework is for you to take these pentatonic scales and find out which chord form shape goes with them. It's all related and very cool. Starting off with a D major at the 10th position, we hit the bass note, snatch the higher end chords, come back with a slap, and then move down with our first finger to the E7 bass note there. After that we move into this horrible B minor add 9 chord and do that. And what's going on there, let me give you that chord first. First finger is at the 7th fret barring everything. Third finger is on the A9, pinky's on the D11. And with our fingers naturally in the middle of the guitar sound hole, we're kind of resting on the D, G, and B strings, fretted strings. And you kind of lightly brush these up. And then we're going to come down, our finger now is in this position. We're going to come down and flick that finger out and do a slap flick. So we percussively hit these strings with the back of the index finger. At the same time, the thumb will come down and make a click. So that's the slap flick. So just from the beginning, like that. And then to complete that, our finger's now in the extended position. The first finger is going to come up and hit the G7. And then our thumb is going to hit the E7 and slide out down low. Let's do the first part slow. So that's the hard thing out of the gate, but once you get that down, that's substitution you'll see again. And then that brings us to measure 2. Measure 2 has us sliding into a G major. So we're thumbing the bottom 2 strings, sliding up into the 3rd fret, and then our bottom fingers will hit the high part of the chord, and then slap. And then we do this little lick, opening with the open D. That lick is an E9, and then we do this hammer-on chord. So my first finger is on the 7th fret from the A all the way down, and I'm going to do a hammer-on from that A7 to the A9, but at the same time I'm going to do a piano attack. My thumb is on the A string, my fingers are on every subsequent string, my first 3 fingers that is. We're going to do this. So that's what we do. Then I'm going to hit with my thumb the A9 by itself. We're going to do a slap flick down, like that, and then end with the open A. Let's do that, measure 2 from the beginning slow. And these open strings you'll see throughout, they lead into the next measure, like that. Let's do measures 1 and 2 slow. Measures 3 and 4 are utilizing the A, B minor, G, and the D with the F sharp and the root. And slow they sound like this. Measure 3 has us sliding into an A. And instead of plucking the whole bottom of the chord, we're plucking the bottom 2 fretted strings at the same time, and then the last fretted one on the D. So, and then a slap. And we have a leading bass note on the E7, and then we pluck that whole chord, which is the B minor, and we're muting this open A string here, and we're not really playing that high E. So, and then we're hitting that bass note again. We're doing the hammer-on chord that we saw before. That's hammering on from A7 to A9, but a piano attack with all our fingers. So one more time, slow. Finishes off that measure. Measure 4 has us sliding into a G. We hit the bottom part of the G, the E3 one more time, before grabbing the top part of the chord and then slapping. Small rhythmic little buck here before we go into the chord hammer on again. And then we kind of brush the middle part of that chord lightly, big slap. And then we hook our fingers into the bottom part of the chord from the D7, G7, B7, and really snap it. And then ending with the open E. One more time, slow. Let's do measures 3 and 4 slow.
Me and all my friends, we are all misunderstood. Say we stand for nothing and there's no way that we ever would. Now we see.
Measures 5 and 6 start the singing portion of the verse. They're a tiny bit different. We start off like this. So right off the top, we don't have a leading bass line in number 5. We just pluck the whole D chord outright, slap, move to B minor. We do this. And that is, we lead off of the E7 here, the bass note. We do a slap flick accenting the D9 string, and then grab the bottom portion of the chord, snap it up, and then transition into a low E. And then measure 6 has us starting with the G, slap, and then open A before going into that D chord. Our middle fingers kind of brush down the 2 middle fretted notes. First finger will lift off on the A9. Our first finger will do a little up brush on the A7, and then we'll do a slap flick into that hammer-on chord and slide it out down. So it's, or any kind of combination of upstrokes and downstrokes that fits that rhythm. Let's do that whole thing slow. Measure 7 has us sliding into the A. And then measure 8. So measure 7, we're sliding into that A, and we're going to do a slap flick down on it before quickly transitioning to the B minor. And then we do a slap flick on that hammer-on chord. Slide out down and hit the open E. And then measure 8 is the G. Slap, open A into the D chord. You kind of see that. It's starting to become more familiar now. So measures 7 and 8 slow.
Now we see everything that's going wrong with the world and those who lead it. We just feel like we don't have the means to rise above and beat it, so we keep waiting.
Measures 9 and 10. So we're starting, we got the bass note back, bass note, top part, slap, the B minor, and then the root note of the B minor chord again. And we have a slap flick on that chord, sliding out, hit the low E, and then measure 10, we're at the G, slap, open A into the hammer-on D. Then we let that hang until the slap, and then we we change it up a bit. So after the slap, that last chord we're going to do is basically a small variation on that D chord. So we have the first part of that D chord, but our pinky's going to be on B10. So we hit the slap and we yank that chord and then deaden it right away and then follow up with the open E. Let's do that part slow and measure 10. And those two measures both together slow, measure 9 and 10. Measures 11 and 12 end out the singing portion of verse 1. They sound like this. And then we go into the chorus. So what's happening in 11 is we have the A, slap into the B minor. Then we have a slap flick down, and then an upstroke. So that slap flick going down is concentrating. You want to hit the D9 here. And then with these two fingers, you want to pull up on the G7 and the B7, the lower part of the fretted chord. Actually, you don't have to use your other fingers. I sometimes use my first finger. Whatever you can do to keep that bouncy kind of rhythm going, that once you hear it, you know when you got it right. Let's do that again slow. We have measure 11, the A, slap B minor, open string, and then the very last measure 12 has the G, and then the hammer-on chord on the D. And the very last chord is holding that chord, we take our pinky, put it on B10, and we just do a downstroke. And that ends off verse 1. One more time slow together.
So we keep waiting, waiting on the world to change. We keep on waiting, waiting on the world to change.
The chorus starts at measure 13. Here's the first two measures of the chorus slow. So it starts off with a slap and then a D in this position. Then we slide up to the D at the 10th fret position and then into the B minor. We hit the bass note of the B minor, a slap, and we have a slap flick out into the low E. And then the next measure is the G, slap, and then the D in this position. We actually hit the bass note of the D, slap, and then we pop the high part of that chord, these three strings. So those two measures together slow, slap. Continuing with measures 15 and 16, they sound like this slow. So that's doing a slap and then the open A, and then the A at the 5th position, and then into the B minor, slap, and then G again, slap, D. This time we change it up a bit. We do a little thing where we kind of brush the middle strings up, slap flick down, and then snap those, the high part of the chord before finishing with an open E. So let's do that whole thing slow.
It's hard to beat the system when we're standing at a distance. So we keep on waiting, waiting, waiting on the world to change. Now if we...
Measure 17 and 18 change things up a bit in the chorus. Sounds like this. So we're starting with this D in this position, slap, and then an E minor 7. And to do that, we're taking our first finger and we're putting it on the A7 and barring everything down. Third finger is on D9, second finger is on B8. Nice thing about this one is you can hit that low E if you want as well, and he does later on. You'll see that in the tab. So. And then the next measure is the G, slap, and then the D in this position. So we're starting with this D in this position, slap, and then an E minor 7. at the E minor 7, we hit the bass note of the E minor 7, slap, and then come back down with our fingers and pop the high part of the chord. And then follow up with that open E. And then we do a B minor 7, which is just barring your first finger all the way down, and pluck everything except that A. So we're going to pluck the E7, and then our first finger is going to be on the D7, G7 for the next one, and then B7. So then we do a slap flick on the E minor 7, and then open. So together, that part. I just want to draw attention to the fact that he does hit the low E here in subsequent passes in the chorus, which I don't go into great detail on in this. You can see it in the tabs. So if you want to do that, it's E minor 7. So here, feel free to throw that low E in. It sounds really cool. And measures 19 to 20 end off the chorus. We're back at the A. We have a leading bass note. So, leading bass note on the A chord, slap, and then the B minor. And this is a small detail. He actually takes his third finger and he bars the A9 and the D9, and he does a slap flick slide out on that. Sounds a tiny bit different. Open E to the G, slapping in the D. Then the bass note of the D, slap, and then come up with the high part of the chord. Snap it, mute it, and then open E one more time.
Yeah, yeah.
Measure 37 is the start of the bridge, and that's where it gets funky with a weird chord. It starts doing stuff like this. So what is he doing with that? That weird chord is called a G minor 7, add 13, no 5. And it looks like this. We have our first finger, we're barring the 3rd fret down, 4 strings, the top 4 closest to you, and our pinky is on the A7. So it sounds like that. And what happens is our fingers, our thumb takes the bass note, and our first finger falls in underneath it, and the other ones follow suit. And the stuff that's being played is alternating between open strings, fretted strings with the thumb. So let's go through them really slow. Measure 37 slow sounds like this. So what we're starting off with is we're plucking the bottom 2 notes, the thumb and first finger, and then a slap. Then we're popping some notes. Now, on the studio track, you hear the sounds being popped, snapped, just abruptly plucked, as being the D7 and the D3. But when I play it, I like to snap these notes in the middle, the D3 and the G3. So I just find it sounds cooler. Then we continue on with an open E, and then those 2 low strings again, open E again, and then we pluck this chord. And what that is, we're plucking with our thumb the E3, our middle finger plucks the D3, and our ring finger plucks the G3. So we're bypassing this fretted note here. It's almost like you're doing this. And then we go and we pop the 2 middle strings again, the A7 and the D3. Then we slap, then we pop the high ones, and then open. I'm gonna cycle through that slow and not talk anymore, and you'll get it from the tab. Measure 38 has some muted up strokes and slaps, and also a position shift up 2 frets. Slow, it sounds like this. Actually, that wasn't that slow. Let's do it slow. So we're doing the whole chord twice. Then we're doing a muted upstroke, and then immediately a down thumb slap, and then popping the high part of the chord. Open string, 2 chords again. Slap, shift it up 2 frets, and we're going to hit those 2 strings in the middle, barred at the 5th fret, and then an open string. So slow a couple times. Very important, that muted upstroke, downstroke, slap, pop part. It's got a triplet feel to it that's very important to get. Measure 39. So again, we see that muted triplet halfway through. An important timing thing. One more time, slow. Measure 40. One more time.
Oh no, 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 we keep on waiting.
Measure 41. From the top. That one takes a bit of a breather. One more time. Measure 42 gets interesting. So what we're doing is we're starting off with those 2 low notes. Slap. And then it's open, and then we arpeggiate the chord. First 3 strings. Slide it up 1 fret. Slide it up 1 more fret. Now we're in the 5th position. We do a downward strum. And then our hand is down. We take our fingers up near the 11th fret, and we do an upstroke. Slide back down to get ready for the next thing. So let's loop through that slow a couple times. And to speed, it's probably measures 43 and 44 and out the bridge. By now we're experts at this chord, so we'll try and do it real time. That's pretty much all it is. He's winding it down. Slap, open, slap. So we kind of slide up the chord at the end, and then slide down from the 5th fret, and then we're going to be going into the outro chorus. So one more time, measures 43 and 44.
We keep on waiting, waiting, waiting on the world to change. We keep on waiting, waiting, waiting on the world to change. One day our generation is gonna rule the population. So we keep on.
Measure 45 is where we transition from the fingers to the pick as we're starting chorus 3 and we're about ready to chord our way out of the tune. So the first 2 bars, 45, 46, sound like this. So I switch to the pick right near the end of measure 45. Slow, it's sliding up. And as I pull my finger down to do the G, I flick the pick out, and I want to do a downstroke on this G chord, and then upstroke, and then a slap, and then our rolled, hammered on chord here. And then we do a little upstroke, downstroke muted, upstroke slightly sounded, and then a down, up, mute. Slow again. like that. Continuing with measures 47 and 48. We're sliding up in measure 47 to the A chord. Hit that once, and then a chunk muted one, and then up, down on the B minor, and then a small little incidental downstroke, and then down, up, and then we lift our fingers off and go down, up on the bottom strings. So one more time. And then in measure 48 we move down to this G add 9. So that's like a G chord, but we're tacking on the E5 with our pinky this high note. And the strumming for that is so again ending off these bottom two strings as we transition. And this is sounding when we lift our fingers off to do the next chord. John Mayer is it's a pretty common thing for him to do these open transitional chords. One more time on measure 48. I just want to talk a bit about the strumming directions. I've gone through the video painstakingly and indicated which ones are downstrokes, which ones are upstrokes. And it's important to know that John Mayer is one of these constant strumming guys. So when you see him doing this, he's constantly... So when he wants to do a long note value followed by two short ones, like in measure 48, I see him do this. I hope I'm exaggerating that enough. Whereas other players, myself included, tend to do this. I let my hand hang out where it was last. I don't know where that's from, if it's from playing electric guitar or whatever. But notice that he's one of these constant strumming guys. So what you see and what you would expect to be coming out, constant, but it's not. No, it's not as exaggerated as that, but you get what I mean. Also, it's important in the tab to notice that the areas of the strings you're going to be picking. That measure again, 48, great example, we'll stick with it. Full strums at the beginning. But coming up for the transitional chord, we're going to hit that open string. We're just kind of strumming up high here, just the last string. Then full, and then down, up, just in the upper real estate area. So they're either full or they're down there or they're up here. You'll see in the tab. Measures 49 and 50. So we're starting off with the D. Then we're doing a downstroke muted, downstroke, upstroke muted, and then into this E minor 7th chord. Well, we're adding with our pinky a high E10. So from the top, slow. Ending up with a downstroke, upstroke on the low E. One more time. Then we're moving to, in measure 50, a B minor. And that B minor is slightly different. We have this kind of thing happening. So downstroke, quick upstroke into a muted thunk. So it's like that. It starts off like that. So those two together.
Change, waiting on the world to change, waiting on the world to change, waiting on the world to change.
Measures 51 to 56 have us bouncing between two chord progressions. Let's just go through it at speed and then I'll slow it down and show you the rhythm. So we're starting off in the A, and it's like this. Before moving down to that G add 9. And then repeating it again. And then the last time he does that long chord at the beginning followed by an upstroke and then the muted chunk. And the same thing down here. So if you got that, instead of the, it's like this. So we have that thing going as well as down here. So instead of, it's, so the last time he plays that part 3 times, and then the last time he does it, he introduces the long chords at the outset. And the B minor is the tricky strumming part in the first part. So the A is low, high, low, low, low. So see that I'm going low, strumming low, high, low. Going back to the transitional open strings. And that part, the G add 9 and the D, is something we've seen already. So, and you'll see I actually kind of affect a little jaunty plucking there, strumming just to keep myself on beat. After that, we do that 3 times. We just repeat this section. We do 2 of these, and we do this wonderful D add 9 chord, like that. And that chord is first finger on the D10, third finger on the A12, pinky on the D14, and the second finger on the G11. Yeah, no open strings, but. And that is Waiting for the World to Change. Hope you enjoyed that wonderful tutorial. It was a fun song to do. While I'm not saying the tutorial is wonderful, because that would be conceited.